Huh, so the robots are pretty neat, pretty angular, but they, like, control them from, like, the pelvis? Like, inside the pelvis? But not like, well, a cockpit, it's not like a cod piece, or, like the Zone of the Enders kind of thing. It's, like, inside. So that kind of means only one thing, right? No, not the prostate. Haha, very funny. It's gotta be, like a womb analogy, right? Who friggin' made this, though? This is weird. What's with the surfboard guy? This is just kind of bizarre. So the antagonist is sleeping with both the protagonist's mom and sister? Like, seriously, I think I want to talk to management. Oh, right. Airing in mid-spring 1998, exactly 2 years after Evangelion wrapped up, was the extremely weird Brain-Powered. It's a show which acts as the first of what I see as the fourth period of Gundam's creator, Yoshiyuki Tomino's Rainbow Robot era, followed by
Turn A Gundam,
and finally, but it's also one of the oddest ones for the fact it seemed to so rarely be brought up in relation to Evangelion. Argon, that's because there's only like 15 of us weirdos watching this stuff. Okay, yes, but beyond obscure mecha anime from nearly 30 years ago, I mean like, thematically. When I watched it years ago for the first time, I had this overwhelming impression of like, okay, so Tomino had done essentially nothing but very obscure works in the Mobile Suit Gundam franchise and its spin-offs for like nearly 15 years straight. And at last he wanted to do something else after F91 and Victory's rough entries. And sure enough, the first new thing he attempted feels like, hey, get that Mr. Tomino! This Eva thing is doing great money-wise. Why not make Tomino do an Eva? After all, he did that Gundam, so this has to be a recipe for success. Literally, take George Lucas and tell him to direct a Matrix thing. After all, he did do THX 1138, but it was only recently, with Konanne's help, that an interview made it pretty abundantly explicit this was kind of Tomino's goal. From the Gunbuster Novels WordPress collection of translated interviews from Brain-Powered Spiral Book. Interviewer: the tagline on Brain-Powered advertising was, "I'll keep on living even if you don't ask me to." You came up with that yourself, right? It gave me the impression that you were aware of Princess Mononoke. Tomino: both Evangelion and Princess Mononoke were released in 1997, and I thought it was a good juncture for Japanese anime. If I didn't make anything the following year, I felt that Eva and Mononoke would continue on forever, and I didn't want that to happen. So Brain wasn't a direct answer to those two works, but if you said that it was something that I whipped up in a hurry in response to the phenomenon, I can't argue with that. No matter what, I could never say that Brain was made with zero knowledge of those two productions. But at the very least, I am happy that I had the bare bones of the outline and about half the story before I watched them. If I had come up with everything afterwards, it would have turned into something much more horrible. Would have been much too influenced. So Mr. Old Man T himself kind of acknowledges that Brain-Powered was some sort of pseudo-response to both Miyazaki's Princess Mononoke, its pretty heavy ecological weight, and Eva's, well, Eva-ness, whatever that means. But not as entirely some singular counter-argument either. With this in mind, it's also a great starting point for this series of things I want to talk about. Now, these won't be full reviews. They're going to be more of like a half review, half comparison. But still, why? Why start with this one? Because it illustrates one of my biggest disagreements and arguments around ripping off Eva and what that means in the context of art. Like, in detail, it's astonishing how little this show is used as an example by more sloppy AniTubers complaining and or trying to make a point about this. We got two main characters, a boy and a redheaded girl, both with complicated if not outright toxic parental relationships. In the boy's case, both of his parents being essentially workaholic academics who blow off raising their kids so they can focus on their work. What is their work? Why, they've found a giant alien spaceship submerged in the planet, which is filled with highly advanced technology and a dash of slightly confusing religious symbolism. In the process of doing so, they also instigate a disastrous climate shift from the giant artifact's partial activation. And what is the end goal of their shadowy organization of Orphan? To fully activate the ancient living spacecraft and leave Earth, traveling and ascending into space. But in the process, the energy needed would essentially render the Earth uninhabitable and wipe out the surviving humans. As is, cities flood and the world is partially ruined. Spawned from this giant alien ship are the so-called brains designed by Nagano. Many regular viewers of mine will be well aware of. The brains are not just machines or even really war vehicles, nor are they some kind of mobile suit of armor. They are born and implied to be somewhat self-aware, acting at times more like children, with the pilots acting as their parents. It's more intimate and personal a relationship rather than a piece of military hardware. Specific to the overall series, though, as a whole, we get a lot of focus on the breakdown of traditional family life, causing both the ruination of the natural world, but also the despair of our leads, Yu and Hime. We have to navigate both cool giant robot battles and relatable interpersonal issues that they end up dealing with. So see what I mean? At first pass, it's incredibly easy to say that's what brain-powered is. It's Yoshiyuki Tomino doing an Eva. Now, unfortunately for both you, dear viewers, and myself, I am a different caliber of nerd. An art nerd. A stronger nerd. Forged in the fires of reading SF books in the library, in the foundries and hellfire of grade school recess. As such, I now make you learn by saying this whole approach is fundamentally wrong. Why? Because the only reason Hideaki Anno did an Eva, or one of the big ingredients at least, was Yoshiyuki Tomino. This is something a lot of those other channels seem to struggle with conceptually, the virus-like nature of art and how its DNA is freely exchanged. As much as we would love to continue living in our hyper-corporate nightmare future, we can't really totally own everything that we make. Ultimately, people being inspired by what we make kind of lets them run and do whatever they want. Shinji has a bad relationship with his father, who helped make the Evangelion units. This ties back directly to Amuro and his dad making the Gundam, while also being a shit dad. Bad parents? They're a running theme in Yoshiyuki. I went into a rant at my mom's funeral about how much I thought my parents were failures, Tomino. It's in Dunbine, and it's in Zeta Gundam. Biological mecha. Yes, I've made many jokes about Ultraman, but Ideon is 3 fire trucks who make a big fire truck man. But Ideon is also an ancient artifact powered by human suffering, which can wipe out and or rebirth the cosmos. Kind of like that purple guy with the Air Jordans in the Anno show. Or if you want another Tomino biomecha thing, once again, Dunbine. Even more niche stuff people would usually gloss over may be triggers here. Those who watch my victory video may remember how Uso, the protagonist, and Marbet, the elder mentor pilot lady, have a bit of a weird surrogate mom/romantic tension, owing to Uso being a 12-year-old and basically working through entering the start of puberty. Knowing Anno, a huge Gundam fan, who watched and straight up had an interview with Tomino mentioning this in the very same video that I did, is it really crazy to think that maybe Anno based Shinji and Misato on this dynamic? Even the core themes about finding self-worth, deciding to accept oneself in the face of a shit reality, learning to live on and survive. These are running themes in many Tomino works, including brain-powered as well. So the hypothetical argument, brain-powered is Tomino doing an Eva, it's basically incomplete. It's really Tomino is doing an Eva, but Anno doing an Eva was just doing a Tomino. Because of that, it's also kind of illustrative of how inspiration and art works. You could make a strong argument that Eva popped off for good reason exactly because it recombined these ideas in a novel and distinct way. A way having the same creator can't do. Because Tomino constantly felt the pressure and expectations of his massive success in Gundam. Really, his entire third, fourth, and arguably fifth, his current, creative periods are all just him working through being in the shadow of it. Even the second period is basically that as well. But by that same metric, you also can't say Anno owns or actually really made Eva from full cloth. Listen, ultimately, the way I see it, especially after his live-action works, is that Anno is a lot like fucking Quentin Tarantino. Both creators are praised for exceptional and memorable works. Both creators popped off in the early 90s with a resurrection of older trends and new works. They also continued to recombine familiar ideas in novel new ways to great success. And both creators ultimately ate up heaps of media in their youth. They loved to set their inspiration salsa to chunky, incorporating big tasty hunks of what inspired them in the first place. In fact, it's incredibly easy to likewise snog out at Tarantino's fame with a, that's just the Cat People OST by Giorgio Moroder in Inglourious Bastards, right? He didn't actually make that for the movie. So with all that in mind, I actually think Brainpowered is actually kind of really, really neat as a work, exactly because it was made in such proximity relative to Evangelion. You essentially get to see what the original master artist's variations were on the concepts that would become, in his protege's work, his most famous ideas. It's a kind of recursive creation. So let's wrap this vid by talking a bit about that. In the final analysis, both Anno and Tomino kind of agree that a big source of despair motivating the personal drama is essentially the difficult breakdown of family and what that means. Work-obsessed parents in unhappy and financially demanding relationships. But whereas Anno's Eva focused more on the children of these situations learning to accept and love themselves, Tomino's conclusion with Brainpowered instead tries to return to the source. Towards the end of the series, a lot of the emotional conclusions are characters making amends with and or fighting their parents. But there's a strong theme that loving families is the solution. The big finale includes a focus on Hime, the main girl protag, going into and communicating with the subtly named Orphan, the giant stranded alien spacecraft, to give it a reason to live and a meaning for existence, and to try to convince it to leave the Earth without destroying it. All the good characters treat their brain biomecha with a sense of companionship and care, like, children or something, while the evil antagonists routinely treat them as tools they can use to achieve essentially power or control. It feels like a strong response to the family conditions of Japan in the 90s, with the economic downturn throwing the already arguably less than ideal Japanese homework-life balance further out of whack. Brainpowered, thus, has a pretty happy ending, filled with a lot of hope. Does this also kind of make it Tomino's possibly most trad work? Yeah, kinda. A lot of focus and blame is put specifically on women and mothers causing the failures during the series, in selfishly pursuing frivolous romance or careers. It's my same ultimate complaint with Zeta. It doesn't seem to be nearly as critical the role bad dads played in things. And perhaps for Japanese culture as a whole, it doesn't really step back and analyze the kind of work conditions that generate these bad family situations in the first place. But, to be fair, it would take nearly 25 goddamn years for Shinji to finally confront Gendo in an arguably meaningfully similar manner. And, I don't want to open the liquid fuel rocket-sized can of worms that is 3.0 plus 1.0 and the Evangelion rebuilds. At least not yet. So, of Tomino's Rainbow Robot Trilogy, is Brainpowered your favorite? No, that's
Turn A Gundam.
Which I think was greatly helped, as Tomino mentions in that same interview, by working out the kinks with Brainpowered, including a boppin' OST by Yoko Kanno on both. So it's your second favorite. No, that's... Which is consistently very fun, and has some insane battle sequences, and some very cool mechanical design. And I, unfortunately, probably won't talk about it in this series. So, do you still recommend Brainpowered? I'd say yeah. If you enjoy weird Tomino shows and kind of want one with a still pretty strong, but not turn A strong, female lead, yeah, sure. As trad as it is, the kind of compassionate, motherly, or just generally caring relationship the protagonists have to their robots is kind of nice. It's not something you see very often in mecha, and let alone something that underpins an entire series. Now, if you're new to Tomino stuff, maybe not. It's an acquired taste. You'll probably find the dialogue really weird. But the lyrics of the OP song are about hard sensual love passion sex, and it fucking rocks. Next time, the pivotal galactic war over the most powerful cosmic warrior of light. The showdown of the Space Federation and its despotic universe-conquering adversaries is about to begin. And the middle school cultural fair is tomorrow!